So you're given a Marconi aerial and you're asked to find out what would be the length, optimum length of it for a transmission frequency of 125 megahertz. So here you can see they have not given you specifically what type of aerial it is in terms of its wavelength. They have just told you it's a Marconi aerial, which is
quarter wave dipole antenna.
That's right. The quarter wave dipole antenna. Now this means that the optimum length is equal to 1/4 of the wavelength, and that's the ideal value, and the practical value is 95% of that. And don't forget to put 95% there, which is 0.95% of what is lambda. Let's find out lambda here from the basic equation, C divided by F, which is 3. Oh, sorry, it's, yeah, that's right, 3 10 to the power 8. Now remember, it's meters per second here. What is F?
125
megahertz. What frequency band is it?
10 to the power 6.
Yeah, 10 to the power 6. What frequency band is that? 125 megahertz?
VHF.
It's falling between 30 to 300 megahertz. That's right. Right? 125 megahertz. And what is the answer? What is lambda?
2.4 meters.
2.4 meters. So you can see it's all units are in line, therefore it's meters. Therefore, the optimum length L is equal to 95% of 2.4 divided by 4. That's right. 0.57 meters, which is 57 centimeters. So you can see higher the frequency, your antenna length will come down because the wavelength is lower, around 60 centimeters. Yes. So what was left in the first session of this radio navigation is Doppler effect. So we'll talk about Doppler effect in the next class. Today what we'll do is we'll do some questions straight away. The ideal length for a Marconi aerial for a frequency of 406 megahertz. What frequency is this? Do you remember? 406 megahertz. I've told you this before because you found the wavelength of this. It's an emergency frequency used by your ELT. So ELT can actually transmit in 1 to 1.5 megahertz, which is the international distress frequency. It can also transmit on 406 megahertz. It's a distress frequency. Right, you have to find out what will be the length for a Marconi aerial. Now, what aerial is this? Marconi aerial?
Quarter wavelength. Quarter wave.
Dipole. Quarter wave dipole aerial. Therefore, what's the length? Length is quarter wave, which is lambda by 4, and then 95% of that. Right. So frequency is 406 megahertz. You know the frequency multiplied with wavelength will give you speed of light. Therefore, wavelength is 3 10 to the power 8 meters per second divided by the wavelength is, so the frequency is 406, megahertz is 10 to the power
6.
10 to the power 6. Therefore, how much is it?
0.73 meters.
0.73 meters. Right? Therefore, length is equal to 0.95 into 0.73 divided by 4. Let's look at
0.7.
options here. This is the final answer which you told me? No.
Yeah, no, this is final length is 0.70.
Let's look at the options here. 0.175 meters, which is 17.5 centimeters. Right, try doing it without the 0.95.
Out that it can be 0.73 divided by 4. 18.25 centimeters.
Right, so we even have that in the answer. So be careful that you have to multiply with 0.95. Alright, perfect. Question number 4. Ready? The ideal length of a half-wave dipole. Length of a half-wave dipole. Ideal length of a half-wave dipole for a frequency of 75 megahertz. Now, can you tell me what frequency is this? This is also something which I have told you somewhere. 75 megahertz. Is your ILS marker beacon operating frequency is 75 megahertz. Right? Yes. So for a frequency of 75 megahertz, what should be the length of a half-wave dipole antenna? Again, the length of antenna, half-wave dipole antenna is 0.95 times lambda, but since it is half-wave dipole, it is lambda by 2. Okay. Same equation here, C is equal to F by lambda. Sorry, C is equal to F into lambda. Therefore, F lambda is equal to C by F, 10 to the power 8 meters per second for a given medium, and then frequency is 75, 10 to the power 6 hertz. Hertz is 1 by second. That's fine. What is the answer? What is the wavelength?
Wavelength is 4 meters.
4 meters. Therefore, what is the length? 0.95 into 4 by 2.
1.9 meters.
Let's look at the options again.
Or else 190 centimeters.
1.9 meters. What's the answer? Which is 1.9 meters. Try doing this again without the 0.95.
0.95 of 4. 3.8
Yep. See?
meters.
It's again there. So be really careful that you really have to apply this 0.95.